Hello here from all of us at LeggUP. Very happy to be here again with all of you. Please, as always, feel free to use the chat feature and share with us where you're joining us from. It's always amazing to see people joining in from all across the globe. My name is Petra Rassel, Head of Coaching here at LeggUP. With me today also is Michael Radigan. He is LeggUP's Head of the Member Experience. And we are a professional coaching and development platform specializing in career coaching and helping organizations to transform through development of their leaders and employees. You are joining us today for part 1 in a new 3-part series. And the new series is 3 Steps to Personal Excellence. It is our mission to support leaders to rise to the challenge created by COVID-19. And our webinar today is titled Reducing Anxiety While Working Remotely. We will continue to support you here over the coming weeks with a deep dive into topics like stress management, anxiety reduction, and self-leadership as they all pertain to how we can set ourselves up for success while working remotely. And it is my true pleasure and distinct honor to introduce our expert on today's topic, anxiety reduction, LeggUP Coach, career and confidence coach, speaker, and the #1 best-selling author, Nancy Martin. In her work with clients, Nancy focuses on creating clarity and building core confidence around decision-making processes and relationship building to ultimately increase personal fulfillment and productivity. Her combination of cognitive behavior therapy and ontological coaching techniques and her leadership coaching and training experience allows her to find the right combination of practices and breakthroughs to make effective, lasting changes. Please welcome Nancy Martin. Thank you for being here to share your insights and experience with us today. And without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Nancy. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much, Petra. Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to be here to learn or to share what I have learned through this time so far. So yes, today we are going to talk about some ways that we can help reduce the anxiety while working remotely. And also now that we are some of us are going to start transitioning back into the office. These are also tips and tricks and lessons that will help us with the transition back also, because as you might imagine, it may not look exactly like it looked before. So being flexible and being open to change is what we're talking about, is reducing anxiety through change. There we go. So yes, my name is Nancy Martin. I'm a confidence coach. The information I'm bringing you today has been gathered through, I've worked with close to 50 individual clients just since the COVID change. So since many of them came to me for one reason, but everyone ended up changing focus to, oh my goodness, how do I handle this now? And I was able to gather that information from working with real live people going through the transition, seeing what worked for them, and now I've been able to gather it all in one place to offer it to you. And my work in or out of COVID, I'm a confidence coach, facilitator, ontological coach, which means the whole being. So in my work, I bring in all of the elements of self. Aha moments and mental changes and things like that are super important, but so are changes in our emotions, the way that we move our body, our whole being in the world. So that's where I work, is through the whole being. Have been fortunate enough to be trained in cognitive behavioral therapy to bring some of those science-based solutions into my work, as well as, my time spent in corporate, both in training and in experience. So today, as we talk about anxiety and reducing anxiety, it's important to remember that the mind is the body. So often in our culture, we have this split. There's this split that there's mental health and there's physical health. There's the mind and the body, and it comes from everywhere. there's a history of in corporate America and things like that of having that, business is not the place for emotions. It's not the place for that type of stuff. We just want to make sure it's, you're doing your job, but there's no room for emotions. And alternately, it also comes from the other end. In so much of the spiritual world, we hear the importance of staying in the spirit and the soul and in that type of side, totally dismissing the role that the body plays in the spiritual side too. And so remembering that our mind comes from an organ in the body. So the mind is the body. The health and the way that we treat our physical bodies are going to affect our brain and therefore our emotional health, our spiritual health, all of the things, our whole bodies. And so that's what we're going to do today, is make that connection so that we are making sure we're taking care of the wholelarity of ourselves, not just one section or the other, but all of it together. And so when we think about reducing anxiety, we look at what anxiety is. So anxiety shows up for different people in different ways. But the one thing that we know about anxiety is that it is fed by the unknown or the perception of lack of control. Think about that if you feel that's true for you. Do you find that you're most anxious when you feel out of control, or there's just this unknown that you can feel your heart racing because of that? And so when it comes to a situation like we're currently in, where we don't have control over when we're going back into the workplace, we don't have control over when we will legally be able to be allowed and being with other, like all of these unknowns, what we can do is identify which things we do have control over and then control the heck out of them. Really take control over the things that you do have control over. First and foremost is your own body. And so we also find that in this mentality of scarcity of time, in this time where it's so often to hear, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that, I don't have time for all the things, no time, no time, no time. Very often, the very first things we decide to take out in order to make time for new things are the actual necessities of life. The things that are literally we would die without are usually the first things that we let go when we're trying to make room for other more productive things. And like really think about that in the long run. Doesn't seem like the smartest decision, but it's where our culture is right now. There's a habit of going into this. So let's talk about those necessities of life and why it's so important to keep them as the core, as the part of our lives, so that we can keep on living, so that we can be productive. So the first thing is water. Make sure you're hydrating. Water is so incredibly important for mental health. Your brain needs to be hydrated. The organ itself needs to be hydrated in order for it to work effectively. It works off of electricity. We need water and hydration in order for those synapses to connect effectively. It is so important to make sure that you are drinking throughout the day and drinking enough. Next is food. Another thing that we hear so much about is, I forgot to eat, or, I'm just grabbing whatever's quick and easy and not eating enough, not eating often enough, and not eating healthy foods are things that absolutely trigger our anxiety, our depression, all other emotional things. We've all heard the term of being hangry, and we know that we get on edge when we don't eat enough, when our blood sugar is low, and that's for a very real physical reason. So let's make sure we are taking care of that, doing all the things that we have control over in our body and taking care of them. Next is fresh air and sunshine. Again, necessity of life. We need air, we need sunshine. Sunshine gives us beautiful vitamin D that is so important for mental health. Let's make sure that if it is possible for you, again, I know that this is a privileged, this is one of the things that might be a privileged thing. Maybe not everyone is in a place where they do feel safe being out very often, but if you're able to be outside, please take advantage of that and do that. please open your windows if you're able to, if you're not able to actually physically get outside. But let's do everything you can to get out of that recirculated air, get some fresh air, get some vitamin D. Next up is exercise. That blood pumping through the body is so important, again, for brain health. Blood circulation is extremely important for brain health and therefore for reducing anxiety. And again, this one, there's kind of no excuses for not having space. You can do jumping jacks in place or just run in place, do whatever you need to do to get that blood pumping. We know for sure that when we exercise, when we get our heartbeat up, that sets off the good endorphins in our body. The good, energetic, positive chemicals are released in our brains so that we are ready to thrive, get out of the doldrums, reduce anxiety, reduce depression, and be able to look hopeful, look forward, be productive, and want to contribute regardless of what the outside situations are. Sleep. This is another one. Oh, this is one of the first ones that so many people get rid of, right? If I see you smiling, I know, you know, right? This is a common one. This is a common one where people, I just don't have time to sleep, or I can't sleep because of the anxiety. It is so important to get a good night's sleep. And again, as more and more research is done on this, there is a reason each and every one of us sleep at night. We do know that if we go without sleep long enough, we will literally go insane and die. So smaller pieces of that affect us in smaller ways, but in the same way. Please make sure you're doing all you can to get a full night's sleep. Some tips for sleep are making sure that sometimes we focus like all of our energies on what time we're going to bed and doing the bedtime routine, which is super important. But we're finding now that what might be even more important is our wake time, having a consistent wake time regardless of day of week. And that if we have that consistent wake time every day, no matter what, our bodies will start to get used to it. And then in turn, we'll get tired naturally at the same time at night, and going to bed will be easier, less anxiety reducing, and all of those things. So shifting the focus to wake time can actually make the entire cycle a little bit easier to handle. When we are focusing on the nighttime, let's turn off those screens about an hour ahead of time. Like it's even if you have your, blue, whatever filters and all those things, it really doesn't matter. It's that light shining in your face that's going to trick your brain into thinking that it's daytime and it's time to get up. So let's turn those screens off. If you do find that you are so thick in anxiety that you're having a difficult time falling asleep, there are some things that you could do about that too. So one is to meditate before you go to sleep, or simply play a story or some type of verbal cues in the background, but where not the television with the light on, but just the sound. It can be just enough to distract your brain enough from those thoughts that are circling and circling and circling when you feel anxiety. The other thing is to keep a notepad next to your bed, so that if those thoughts are cycling, sometimes they just need some relief. They just need to know that they're being heard. Those cycling voices, they're kind of like toddlers. Like they start off kind of little, and they start off kind of, like, mom. And then before long, they're coming over and they're tugging on your leg. And then before that, they're crawling on top of you and in your face and all over the place. And that's how those thoughts can be. Without acknowledgement, they get louder and louder and more annoying and more annoying. And the sooner you acknowledge their existence, the sooner they can go away. And so when you first start to hear them, go ahead and write them down. It's a way of acknowledging them. It's a way of giving them value and just getting them out of your body physically with the hand on paper, and just mentally just knowing, I'll look at this in the morning. It'll still be there for me. I don't have to remember it. It will be there waiting for me when I'm able to come back to it and actually do something about it. And the next one is your own energy. when we do go back to this idea of being at home, and those of you that live with other people in the home, look, some of us are used to working from home before or after or during COVID. We're like, that's how we work sometimes, right? Some of us are used to working from home, but what we're not used to is working from home 24 hours a day with the family. And it's a big difference from being alone and working and being in your own energy and having control over what that energy is that you're working in versus adapting to the other energies coming in and out of the room and the space and needing to split attention and all of those things. And so making sure that you have that time to yourself every day. And that looks different. Really look into that for yourself, what that means, how much you actually need and what that needs to look like. But please take some time for yourself each and every day to tap into your own self, to tap into your own energy without outside sources. So important. And lastly, do the things that you know help you to reduce stress. We talked about some of them. All of these things help reduce stress, but there's some other external things too. Look, we all know who the people are in our lives that cause us a little bit more stress than others. So maybe we minimize exposure to them. We all know that for some of us, the news, and especially now during this time, can be very triggering and cause external stress. And I understand that we have a sense of community and we need to know what's going on in the world. But let's face it, we're doing all we can do right now. We're staying at home, we're wearing our masks, we're wearing our gloves, we're doing all the things that we need to do to take care of ourselves in this particular situation. And there is no way that you're going to be released and allowed to leave the home and not know about it, right? So we don't have to be checking numbers and checking all of the updates every single day to find out where things are in order to make our own decisions on actions. So regardless of what numbers are or what is going on or how things are being represented or how things are being communicated on the news, if that information is not going to change your actual choices in life as far as what actions you're going to take, it's kind of irrelevant if it's causing you anxiety. So like, really hear me. If the absorption of these details aren't actually going to change any physical decisions you are making, any actual decisions you're making in your life, they don't have to be there. They're not affecting your life directly in that way. And so you don't need to know them. If they are causing you anxiety, however, if they are emotionally affecting you, then that is when they are overshadowing your whole being and all of your decisions by bringing a mood of anxiety coming over you. So when external things cause you additional stress and aren't adding quality to your life, it might be time to take a break from them. It might be time to take a break from the news, from social media, from those things that cause you extra stress that are not bringing you any additional value. And so at this point, we would like to, before we move on to our next slide, we're curious. What are the challenges that you're facing when you're working from home? What are the challenges that you're facing right now? Because they may have changed from a week ago, 3 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. But what are the challenges that you're in right now? Go ahead and put, Petra, go ahead. How do you want them to let us know?
As we said in the beginning, always feel free to use the chat box. We'll give a little extra time. We've already got some feedback here for you, but wanted to just give a few folks more time, and maybe we want to circle back to that in a minute, if that's good, and just see what's going on with everyone.
Yeah. So as I go through the next slide, go ahead, and if it triggers anything for you, go ahead and throw it in there. We want to know what are your challenges, and if you have any questions around any of them, I'll gladly answer any questions or comments on anything that you need. So take care of those necessities of life, take care of that body so that you can thrive in all the possible ways.
I love the fact that you really hone in on what you said, the basics, right? It's this really this obvious stuff that we know, most of us do, right? And it's like we're not doing it.
Yeah, of course, right? We learn what in second grade or whatever it is that, you know, we die without air, water, and food, right? But yeah, they're the first things we decide to get rid of when we're too busy or wanting to be productive or wanting to impress others or whatever those things are, right? Yeah.
It's really do it, right? Not just agree with it, do it.
Right. Well, and that's it, right? That's the key in all of this stuff is it's great to have aha moments. It's great to redefine our language and our words and all these things, but unless you actually take physical action, it doesn't mean anything, does it? It's, you know, it's a great idea, but unless you actually act on it, it's not going to change your life in any way. It's the action that changes your life, not the thought, right?
It's the habits, right? That we, as coaches, we always know that's the toughest thing to change, right? Are those habits?
Yes, yes, right? They can be difficult to change those habits if we don't, again, put focus on them and put a game plan into place, a steady practice game plan into place. Absolutely, absolutely.
One comment we can share at that juncture already is from the challenges of working from home all the time with family there all the time also, right?
Yes. And that we will be digging into, that will be part of this next slide also, that yeah, and depending on who it is, right? It could be roommates, it could be, you know, a spouse or partner, or and then if there are kids in the mix, that's a whole different animal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So we will be getting into that. So I'm sorry.
I'm sure our pets also wonder by now, why are these humans home at all times?
Yeah. Well, it depends on which pet, right? The dogs are all like, yay! And all the cats are like, hey, man, what are you doing in my space? Like, you were supposed to be gone
Right.
a long time ago, right? Yeah, so let's talk about being at home all the time with all the people. And again, these tips you'll see how there are factors of this that you will be able to stream into your transition back into the workplace too. So what we're hearing is some people, their transition into the workplace is going to look very different. It's a not all or nothing. Some people are only going back one person at a time into the office or two people at a time so that they're able to keep their distance. And that's going to be going on for several months before the actual, you know, transition fully back into the workplace. Some are going straight from nothing to everything, which will be a whole other transition. It's going to be a transition back. We've been out long enough. So a lot of these tips, elements of them, what they are is they're going to help you with whatever that transition may be for you. So the first one is around acceptance. It's around acceptance. Part of our anxieties around this is that whole idea of we don't know when. I think we could all handle this stuff so much better if we were able to know. And it doesn't even matter what the date was. If we were given a date, if it's 2 weeks from now or 2 years from now, if we had a definite date, how much weight would be lifted, right? If we can plan for that time. And so it's the unknowing that causes the anxiety. It's the unknowing. And so we don't have control over what we don't know because we're not the ones in charge of making this decision. But what we are in control of is how we attack that, how we accept that, what we do with this lack of information. And so we can go each day saying, is it tomorrow? Is it tomorrow? Is it tomorrow? Or we can be in acceptance and say, it doesn't matter if it's tomorrow or next year, I'm accepting where I am. And so I'm going to just treat it as if it's long-term. Just treat it as if Get comfy, snuggle into your seat, snuggle into your surroundings, and get comfortable with the idea of what is happening right now without that anticipation of when it's over. The more we accept what the current situation is, and the more we really just kind of settle into it and get comfortable with it, the easier it's going to be, the less anxiety we're going to feel around it. So just pretend it's long term. Then when things do get lifted, it's just a pleasant surprise that then we get to go into the next transition versus that being disappointed over and over and over again. Next is setting your morning routine. So some of us have gotten really comfortable with the idea of working from home and being in the PJs and maybe not getting up every day at the same time like we talked about. It's so important if you're going to be productive during this time that you treat the morning like a morning, that you still get up at the same time, you take your shower, do your face and your hair, you wear real clothes, like, real clothes, not just the PJs. You treat yourself like the human being that you are. Pretend you're going into the office. Do all of the things, eat your breakfast, do all of your morning rituals, do all the things that make it feel like a work morning. Now, some of us are really missing our commutes. We're missing that time in the car where it's that transition from one physical place of home to the other physical place of work. And there are some things you could do about that. And you can make a transition for yourself. You can make a commute for yourself. Again, if it's safe for you to do and you feel comfortable doing so, just go outside and take a walk around the block. Just that extra little transition to go from there to here can mean wonders. Get in your car and drive around the block. Do whatever you need to do. And again, if you're not able to do that, you can figure it out. You can figure out what that thing is. Is it staying in your room for a few minutes to transition mentally and emotionally from one place to another? Just make sure you do something so that the transition is clear between home and then, and make it a ritual. Plan out the day. If you're a planner or not, plan out your day. Know when to expect what. Because again, it's a way of gaining control, meaning reducing anxiety of what time am I going to eat? What time is this meeting? Like really, time blocking is a great way to tackle this. It's important if you do use time blocking that if something does come in and take the space of something, that you don't delete that thing. You simply change it and move it to another day or another part of the day. It's important not to delete those things that you already had planned that you gave value to in your calendar. Make sure you stick by them. Plan your day and stick with it. And again, just that knowing of what's coming next and when it is will help reduce that anxiety. Plan your meals, especially your lunch. Take a lunch. Take a real lunch, people. Take a real lunch. Take a real lunch as if you're in the office. Again, maybe that means going outside. Maybe that means, putting it in your lunchbox in the morning and then pulling it out at lunchtime. But get away from your desk, get away from your work, and plan a real lunch. Come together with your plan with whoever is at home with you. And so this is going to help address the concern that was put up in the chat box of come together when it comes with this schedule. Plan it with your partner. Plan it with your family. Have it posted so people know what to expect from you when. Make sure they know, and especially if there are kids in the house, when is it okay for them to interrupt and when is it not okay for them to interrupt? We all know that there's phases of work, right? There's things that we need to be head down. There's times we're speaking with clients, so there can be like no interruptions. And there are times where it's a little bit more loose, where if something's coming up, we can certainly step away for a moment to take care of someone and come back. So make sure everyone knows, everyone's on the same page with what's going on so that they know what to expect from you when. And then have an established workspace. This part is super important too. And for some of you, you may be in a studio apartment where, look, the only, horizontal space you have is your table where you eat. And that's okay. But what you do need to do is designate when it's eat time and designate when it's work time. And so one particular client of mine that is in that situation, that's exactly what she does. When she is not working, her space is set up with her tablecloth and her flowers and her candle. And when she's eating, it looks like a beautiful dinner table. But during work hours, for that first half of the day and that second half of the day, she goes ahead and she takes those things off and puts them aside and then sets up her workspace. And she sets up her computer and her notepad and the things she needs from work, so that physically, visually, emotionally, there's a very clear switch between when I'm working and when I'm home, when I'm at work and when I'm at home. It's very obvious to the body and to the emotions when you're in each space. And if you are with other people, that's also the trigger for them of when they can come and when they can't. Some people are setting up little signs, either with words or if they have young children, symbols or pictures to say, this is the time I'm on a meeting, shh, like this is the time you need to be quiet and either go to your room or go to a separate space. And these are times when, it's a little more loose. If you need me, you can interrupt for a quick question. So just making sure that everyone is super clear on when you're working and when you're on a break. How is this sitting? Is this bringing up anything for anyone?
I'm just really wanting to get us back before we get too far ahead on your initial question. We had another comment that I believe is also something that may resonate with several folks. As we go through this, and as you said before, some challenges change over time, right? There was maybe a little bit more tolerance in the onset of this, and now it's starting to wear thin a little bit more. So one of those things is the irritability, right? I mean, we get triggered a little bit easier. And one of those triggers for a lot of folks is noise. And I've heard this in my own work a lot. And I can actually admit that it actually also is starting to become a trigger for me if there's a lot of ongoing outside noise. Mm-hmm. Which is trying to concentrate, right, and trying to really focus in. And then if you have a leaf blower go off outside for 25 minutes. In this particular case, we had one attendee here from Switzerland saying, lots of loud neighbors and things that can really affect your quality of work time, right? And personal time too, of course, at home. And really trying to, even with headphones and things, it's sometimes really hard to escape that and then not expose yourself to that undesired side effect of getting angry or, anxiety, whatever comes up, right, for folks.
Yeah, exactly. And so two things come up for me there. One is, yes, do what you can physically to take care of that. Get the noise canceling headphones, play some music that gets you in the right mood. The right kind of music is important, not just music, but the right kind of music that puts you in the mood, that your desired mood, is super important. So on my phone, my song lists are organized not by artists or genres, but they're organized by mood. And what mood do I want to be in? And then I pick that song list so that my body feels it also. And so maybe it's time when, the lawn work's going on, maybe that's time to take on a piece of work where you need to be a little more energetic so that you could play louder or higher energy music to kind of tune it out. And then power through that piece of work, that project that needs fast decisions and fast typing and fast movements. And then once it's over, then you could go back to your calmer, okay, now I need to focus in. Don't be afraid to, again, with that time blocking thing, feel free to switch stuff around, just make sure you get back to it, right? So if something loud or annoying starts to kick off, go ahead and take a look at your tasks. Which ones can handle that? Which tasks can handle having that type of high energy noise and activity around you? Or is it a time for your exercise break? Is it a time to get up and do some jumping jacks or take a walk or do something to shift your energy around?
Love that idea. Get that energy out, right?
Yes, exactly. Because secondly, the reality is for many of us, the way anxiety presents itself is that our focus becomes outward. Like, so personally, one of my, like, I know my anxiety, one of my early signs that my anxiety is building up is I notice how much a jerk everybody else in the world is, right? Like the focus is all out there on how everybody's living their life the wrong way. And that's when driving becomes a pain in the butt, and seeing somebody with or without a mask is, you know, a pain, like annoying. And like when your annoyances are all out there, that's probably a good sign that your anxiety is ramping up. When you take your attention from self, what you have control over, what your needs are, what you need to be taking, you know, what you need to be controlling, when that focus goes from self to outward, that's usually your anxiety ramping up. So that's the time to take a look at your anxiety list. What are the things that help my anxiety? Take control of the things I can control. Do my calming techniques, whatever that is for you. If that's, you know, we have, because I live in an apartment with my son, and we have a rebounder. We have just a small trampoline. And either one of us, when we start to get a little, maybe it's time to jump, and just go over 1 or 2 minutes of jumping around, sometimes is often just enough just to reboot and get back. Was there another one that popped up?
I think we're good for now. As
great.
As we collect more, I will obviously I'll share with you.
Perfect. Yeah. Awesome. Perfect. So then the other thing around the anxiety from working from home is being sure to ramp up your communication. Make sure you're communicating clearly, thoroughly, and often, especially, you know, being that we don't have that daily physical connection with those in the office anymore. But it also starts with family and friends that don't live with you. This time right now is the perfect time to catch up with all of those people that don't live near you. All those people that you always say, oh man, I miss them, or I haven't talked to them in so long, or whatever it is. Because right now, it doesn't matter if they live next door or halfway around the world, you still have the same communication tools. You're not heading over to the bar with your friend to hang out. You're not taking your best friend out for lunch anymore. And so now's the time to rebuild those connections that are not close to you physically, because it takes the same amount of energy. It's taking the same tools to do so. So go ahead and reconnect with those people that you've lost connection with. Your coworkers, oh, it's so important right now to make sure that you're communicating with them more often than you would in the office. Make sure they know what you're doing and you know what they're doing. Have some type of scheduled ongoing conversations so that things don't fall through the cracks productively for you. This is a time when things can so easily fall through the cracks because they're not sitting next to you to just say, hey, by the way, do this, or I just did this. That's not available anymore. And it may seem too little to interrupt them with an email or an IM or whatever your communication tool is. So I do highly suggest setting up a daily or weekly communication tool for your coworkers as an excuse and a reason to keep each other in the loop in what's going on. And then with your kids and partner, sometimes because our focus is so much on work, and if we don't have that cut off at the end of the day because we're working from home, we're losing touch with the people that are in the house with us, in the home with us. And again, sometimes the communication just gets reduced to the annoyances, and that's not what we want, right? So having more communication more often, like having the dinner together at the end of the day, recapping the day, planning the next day tomorrow, looking at that schedule that we talked about and planning it together with your partner, making sure everyone's on the same page, posting it for the kids, like really having more and more communication with the family is so key right now. Just because you say lots of words to them doesn't equal effective communication. So all of the, hey, shut up, they don't count. That doesn't count as effective communication. The effective communication is actually tuning in with them. There is a tip for those of you with kids that if we have time, I would love to share. Is that something we have time for, Petra?
Yep.
So there's this great tip that I found when you do have kids, especially during this time, but really any time at all, is to make sure that you have this established one-on-one time with each child. Because again, that's an excuse. It's that reason to keep that communication going. And there's some tips on how to do this in a way, like sometimes it just feels so abstract that we don't actually do it. It's like, I don't know what to do with them or whatever. So there's some steps to this. So go ahead and take your kid and have a sit down with them and really talk to them about this new, exciting relationship you're going to have with them. And you tell them how every single day you are going to spend, and listen, it could be as little as 20 minutes. And I'm not kidding, as little as 20 minutes. You're going to spend one-on-one time, no work, no, other kids, no whatever, one-on-one time, 20 minutes each day. And you get to, with them, decide what do they want to do? What are we going to do with this time? What games can we play? What books can we read? What are the things that you would love to do with me just one-on-one? And you make a list so that when that time comes, it's easy to just pick one off the list. You don't spend 15 of the 20 minutes deciding what you're going to do. It's right there, handy, ready to go. You allow them to name the time. What is this thing going to be called? So that you can make reference to it. This is super important for two reasons. One, it gives them control because they're naming it. Two, it allows you to get credit. So each time you have this time with them, you call it by name. So you say, hey, in 5 minutes, we're getting ready for our special time. And then after you're done, oh, that special time was so amazing. Thank you so much for it. And then that way, when there are other times when you are working or stressed or just not in a way where you're able to spend time with them when they need you, you're able to make reference. Our special time will be at 5 o'clock and I'll be able to take care of that then. And it kind of gives you those little bonus points as a parent with your kids that you are taking this time. And again, you get credit for it at the end of the day when you are tucking them in bed or when they're getting ready for bed. Oh, that special time. Remember that special time? It was so great. And so they really start to bond with you. And again, 20 minutes is, you can handle 20, you know what I mean? And also set the timer. Set the timer on the phone so that when it beeps, it's not your decision to stop. They don't renegotiate or anything else. The time is the time. When the timer goes off, that special time is so wonderful. I can't wait for tomorrow. And then you get to go back to work or back to dinner or back to whatever it is that you were doing.
Beautiful idea. Love it.
And I'll tell you from experience, super effective, super powerful. And as the kids grow, it keeps your connection with them super strong when they start to enter the years where you really need to make sure you have that connection with them for communication's sake. And then next, we're going to talk about, again, when we're talking about reducing anxiety, can't go there without talking about gratitude. So gratitude to me is finding that thing, finding that light, finding that purpose in everything. The gratitude is the purpose in each thing that happens in life. It's that lovely blessing. It's the blessing in things that happen. And it's where our life lessons live. Our life lessons live in the gratitude. Hear me. This one is so important. Our life lessons live in curiosity and gratitude. And there are lessons to be learned in every single situation. And when something does happen that is negative, we can dwell on the specifics of it and dwell on our disappointment or our regret or anything else that we feel around it. And we could live there for the rest of our lives. Or we can take a moment, find the gratitude and the lesson in what happened. What can I do differently next time? What is the essence of what's happening in this? How can I allow this experience to change the way I look at things for the rest of my life? What is the lesson? What is the lesson in this event? And then when you have that beautiful lesson in gratitude, you get to pull that forward into your future and leave the event behind. You don't have to relive that event over and over and over again, but you do get to live in that gratitude and that beautiful lesson that you learned, so that helps you grow through the future going forward. That's where the goodness is. That's where growth comes from. That's where our purpose in life and making sure that we're living our lives to the fullest comes from. It's in that lesson of gratitude that can be found in every single thing that happens. And finding a practice that allows you to find that gratitude on a regular basis naturally starts to lighten up that anxiety, because the triggering events have lessons in them and it takes the trigger away. The gratitude and the lesson takes the anxiety and the trigger away from triggering events. It solidifies them, it gives them purpose, and so therefore you're not holding on to what's so annoying anymore. And so that stinking leaf blower, Petra, there's a lesson in there. There's a gratitude in this leaf blower that we can find. Is it around the same time every day or every week? Can we schedule our way? Or is it a lesson in flexibility that we can maneuver around it? Is it a lesson in endurance, learning how to work through it? What is the lesson in the little annoyances that you are finding in life? And the way to really have this gratitude permeate your way of thinking is by establishing a new habit, by establishing a practice, so that your brain naturally begins to find its way back to gratitude regardless of what's happening. And so we did talk a little bit earlier about habits and how establishing them can be difficult, but we do now know that there are 2 effective ways to establish habits. I highly suggest, when practicing gratitude or presence or mindfulness or any type of new idea that you want to really intertwine into the way that you live, that you do it at least 3 times a day, every day, even weekends, because it's your life. It's not your work life, it's your life. 3 times a day, every day. And there's 2 effective ways to establish new habits. One is to make some type of reminders for yourself. So that can look like putting reminders on your phone or in your calendar. That can look like Post-it notes around the house. It can look like using dry erase markers on your mirrors and windows with a little message reminding you of what it is you want to remember. Whatever it is, some type of external reminder, so that 3 times a day, at least 3 times a day, you'll see that reminder each time you go to the bathroom or go to the refrigerator or whatever, and remember it, and then practice it when that reminder goes off on your phone or when you see it. So that's one way, is external reminder. And then the second way is attaching this new habit to an already established habit, like brushing your teeth, eating, taking a drink of water. If you already have an established habit of walking around the block 3 times a day, attach it to that. Prayer or meditation, you can attach it to that. Anything that's already fully ingrained and established in your life, you can attach this new habit to the already established habit and then it can become part of an ingrained habit in your brain also. So that's how to make habits a little bit easier, a lot easier, and effective.
We had a really nice comment here. I may want to quickly share too, as we are still talking a little bit about the gratitude practice and what that could look like. So clearly, as you said too, that's really, you know, different for everybody. And the reflection process is different for everybody, right? What puts you in that right place, that right setting, that right state of mind to really reflect. And one of our guests in the audience is really going back into nature and just really, I mean, that's where we have abundance, and we have a lot of things that we sometimes don't realize when we come from these places of scarcity and like you said, loss and lack and can't do. And sometimes it's really refreshing to look at all the things that are still beautiful, right? Even if it's just the birds and the cherry trees and the vegetable garden and whatever else we may have going on kind of on the side.
Yeah.
It's sometimes a beautiful way to just get yourself into some stillness and appreciate, right, the things that still are quite magical, you know, in the midst of everything. So I thought it was a very sweet reminder of just look at some simple stuff that really can make a big shift in your attitude, in your energy, and allows you to reflect for a moment, right, and be thankful.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, going back to like, you know, those necessities of life, one of the reasons why I talk so much about going outside and taking a walk is because we can kind of feel like a caged animal in these buildings too, if we don't get out and see that amazing expansiveness that you can only find by going outside, right? Being in that air and just seeing, my goodness, how much space there is between you and the sky, right? And feeling that abundance of nature and expansiveness that's out there. And, you know, I have to tell you that my most life-changing decisions, my biggest decisions in life, like the ones that, you know how you have those moments in life where you look at, you know, life before or after this decision, like those really defining moments. My biggest decisions in life have been, the decisions themselves have been made in nature, taking lessons that I've learned from just sitting in nature and just listening to what comes up from the waterfall, the trees, the bubbling brook, whatever it is that calls to you. Everyone has different things that they learn from or that they're called to in nature. Yeah. And don't be afraid to, if you're in a place where you're not able to get out to a big park or a big place, you could bring pieces of that nature into your apartment, into your home, so that you can still have it. You can still hold on to that rock. You can still breathe in the air from a plant. You could still have the effects of nature, even if you are in a big city and it doesn't feel easy for you to access that in that bigger way. But man, if you have access to it, whew, take advantage of it. Get out there and just really soak it in. Do we have anything else? Because I can see.
Not at the moment. We are also getting up here shortly on the top of the hour. So please share with us anything that popped up for you while you were listening to Nancy guide us through this process. Like I said, we love for you to share in the chat box. So feel free to mention a few things that came up for you with respect to challenges or practices that were helpful thus far. And I'll hand it back over to you, Nancy.
Yeah. And also if there's any holes, is there anything that I missed? Is there, you know, is there some kind of something that hasn't been touched on? Let's dig it out. Now's the time, right? Let's dig it out. So if the gratitude practice is new to you, right? If you don't have one established and it is new to you, there's several ways to go about it very easily. It can, of course, be verbal, where, you know, each night at dinner or each night before bed, you just share, you know, 3 things that brought you joy or, you know, that you are grateful for throughout the day. It's especially helpful if you're able to, you know, talk about that thing that you consider to be negative and then work hard to find that gratitude in there, like really dig around in there and see where you can find that lightness and gratitude and the lesson in that negative thing. But absolutely something as simple as like just taking it. And if sometimes, some days you will struggle. Some days we struggle with finding the thing. It was just like a really, really bad day. And we struggle finding the thing, right? And so that's the time, listen, we can always come back to just here. And go ahead with me now, just take a nice deep breath that like just enters your whole body all the way down to your hips. Inhale all the way in and exhale it out. And you can feel that difference in temperature when it's cooler going in and warmer coming out. And this breath right here, the one you just took, my goodness, that's something to be grateful for. That breath, that proof of life, that proof of value, that you did not do anything specific to earn, like you, just you are worthy enough of that breath of life that you just inhaled. You just being exactly you are enough, are worthy enough, and can be super grateful for that life-giving breath that you just inhaled. Sometimes that's all we can come up with, and it's definitely more than enough to be grateful for if there's nothing else.
So we're definitely getting a lot of feedback on how helpful this was in its addressing, you know, and really offering specific steps. So that was something I can share here from the chat box with you.
Great, great. Yes, that's fantastic. Yeah, I'm all about taking the actual physical steps. It's great to have aha moments, but without action attached to them, we won't see any changes in our lives. It's the action that goes with.
What's also beautiful, you know, just looking at everything that you shared with us today, it's also this idea of creating a toward state, right? Like you said, acceptance, you know, get comfortable. And imagine, you know, if I can't make this revert back to what I knew before, you know, we're really focusing on what can this be looking forward.
Yeah.
And the opportunity that are in that, and then commit to action and then build the habit, right? And I think it's always that, I think, beautiful that we have some steps here to actually put that in place. Because the sequence, I'm sure we all are familiar with. It's just sometimes, okay, create the state. I you know, what do I envision really here that is going to be helpful and supportive, right? Not the terrible stuff that I rather not want to know about, and then commit to action and build the habit, right?
Exactly. Yep. And here's just some resources that I use for myself. There's a fantastic book on sleep and health that'll give you all these, since that is one of those necessities of life that so many people, that's the first thing to go for so many people. Michael is a great friend of mine, and his work is just amazing that he's doing in sleep and productivity. He works with professional sports teams and all kinds of things to maximize productivity through the knowledge and use of sleep. The mindfulness app of Insight Timer is something both my son and I both use. Curable is a fantastic app that uses mindfulness and mental changes to help anyone with chronic pain in any way. And it's been amazing for me, not just in the chronic pain realm, but throughout my whole life. Those exercises have affected my whole life. So that's something that I just absolutely love. I did write an article where all of this is written out, the things that we learned today. And then, of course, my book, Dance Your Way to an Empowered Self.
Thank you for sharing that with all of us, Nancy. Again, I think mostly appreciated all your very specific tips and steps of how to come from the idea and the identifying of what's going on, right, to, okay, now we're going to commit to some action here, and beautifully laid out by you. We want to remind everybody as we come to the top of the hour to please join us again next week. We will be here again and give you a little bit more insight on how to control stress, how to really create some helpful habits to set yourself up for success as we all move forward in these rather unprecedented times that we're navigating together. Please also join us on the last page while you're logging out on the webinar back for next week on a assessment that is freshly released out of LeggUP Labs. Everything we touched on today is actually being addressed in the dimensions we measure and then generate a comprehensive report for you. All of that in less than 10 minutes. So take the assessment, and you can also visit us directly on our homepage and then access the assessment from there. That's www.leggup.com. And let us know what your experience was with it. We're very curious to hear how that assessment works for you to really get a good grip on what's going on well-being wise and productivity wise with you while you're working remotely. Again, thank you, Nancy, for taking us through this today. Wonderful and insightful, valuable information you were sharing here with us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a wonderful remainder of your day, and looking forward to seeing you again next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.